Okay, hi everyone. We're going to cover two topics today. We're going to cover organizational structure and production operations. And essentially what that is that's a result of, you know, having management principles to go to tools and using the structures and the processes to be able to get the behaviors to get to organizational outcomes. So it's really important to kind of get a sense or an appreciation for these kind of elements of the management system. And again, it's all connected. So, we're going through management principle evolution, but again, the management principles will translate into tools and techniques and processes and structures. So that's how it all comes together. So what I'm showing you here on the first page is there's seven organizational structures. They're the main ones. I'm sure there's hybrids of either or kind of thing, but I've worked in all seven. So if you do have any questions, you can email me about different types of organizational structures, and I will I would hope to be able to answer that. And if it's pertinent to your colleagues, I will post the answer on Blackboard as well under announcements. Okay, so here's where we're heading. So that the first thing that I want to put your attention to is Chapter 5 of the the e-text pieces. And again, this is Robbins PowerPoint presentation, and I've asked you to really look at this to be able to do assignment number 2. So you should be familiar with it. But this slide deck is a must-study deck for test number 2 and the assignments. So it really gives you the rich information to be able to do what you need to do and answer the questions. Okay, so what are the learning objectives in this thing? It's all about the elements of organizational structure and the factors that affect organizational structure. If you have a business and the wrong structure, there's no way that you could be effective. There's no way that you can be effective or efficient. So I'm going to talk about form follows function. You really need to know what you're going to be doing, and then you accommodate with the structure that's going to support you. And we're going to look at some common organizational designs, and we're going to describe some contemporary organizational designs. And the thing is that where we're going in global trading, in terms of the acceleration of global trading, even though there's a bit of a blip in the globe right now because of tariff problems, but essentially it's been moving ahead in leaps and bounds. And with the advent of artificial intelligence and other assisting technologies, we're going to be more and more along a virtual organization and more along a network organization because the world is your oyster. You can go out and find specialty interests, that have these specialty skills that you can contract on an as-needed basis, and then you create a network structure to be able to accommodate, bringing in the work and getting it all together to get to the organizational outcomes. So that's where that is. So what are the deliverables? And this shouldn't be week 4; it should be topic 4. So there's 3 surveys. They're due May the 16th. All right, on organizational structure assessment, effective empowerment and engagement, and delegation of self-assessment. But I want to put your attention to there's practice tests in topic 4. I've shown this before, but I want to, there's basically 3 practice tests. And what that would do is if you go through and you take a look at them, it'll give you a sense of what the questions will be like in test number 1. So we're going to talk a little bit more about test number 1, even though I covered it last week. Really to give you some, some rich information to be able to do the best that you can do. Okay, so for the first participation activity for topic 4, again, that's due May the 16th, you were asked to, to pick a company, right? In topic 3. And based on that company that you chose, and again, I asked you to fill out a form, to get more information on that company so that you could make more meaningful analysis around that. I want you to take a look at look at the organization mandate for that. And we're going to talk about triple bottom line today. And that'll come up about slide 22. So that's where they're asking you about, from a triple bottom line perspective, how does this organization contribute to the social good for society? And again, we're going to cover a little bit about corporate social responsibility as well. And that's all part of the aspects of what triple bottom line is all about, which I'll explain in a few slides. So you start with the organization mandate, with its vision of the organization and what it does for society beyond producing its products and services. And then you say, based on that organization, what's a good thing that it does? And again, back up your assertion, tell me why it matters. And the next one is, what's a bad thing that's possible that could happen, from a triple bottom line perspective. Maybe it's not doing as good as it should, in terms of environmental protection or whatever. Provide that example. And again, tell me why it matters. And I'm not looking for large paragraphs, but be economical, but yet be very focused on what I'm asking you to do. Okay. So that's participation topic 4A. Now for topic 4B, again, review this chapter, this organizational structure and design to really be able to answer 4B. And this is why, again, it's a reminder from participation activity 3A, the organization that you chose should have at least 5 or more people, so that if you're going to create an organizational chart for this organization, it's meaningful, not just one person then does everything kind of thing. And so that you're going to create this chart, and we're going to go on through that. I'm going to give you some examples on how to do that, and then provide structure information about, comment on the organization's degree of centralization and specialization. And again, I'm going to define these terms in this presentation as well, so you'll know what you need to do. And then describe how jobs are formally divided, grouped, coordinated for that organization. And please use a numbering system so I can just see it lay out. Help me help you on marking many of these. So it allows me to be a lot more effective in providing you a fair mark, because then I see it all up front, and then I don't have to go looking for specific information. So that's why I'm asking you to do it in this certain way. Okay, so just back to the test number 1 again. You can see here that the key things to review for test number 1 are the commentary PowerPoints, for topics 1, 2, 3, and 4, and then the Robin PowerPoint presentations. And you can see there's 3 of them that's really covered for this test. Chapter 1, Chapter 3, Chapter 5. And again, those particular presentations you can find in the folders that are in the in the commentary folders that is shown on the navigation panel in navigational panel in Blackboard. And what I'll ask you to do is, actually do the testing to make sure that your lockdown browser is working and your webcam is working, because otherwise it won't give you access to the test. And you'll be able to access this test in Blackboard topic 5. So if you went to look for it right now, you wouldn't see it. But on May the 20th at 8 a.m., you're going to see it appear. And you'll have a window from, and I think I'll just go to just make sure that, so you'll see it appear at May 20th, and that's the day after the long weekend at 8 a.m., and it'll be open until 11:55 the next day. All right. And again, it's 50 multiple choice and total true and false questions, mainly multiple choice. The duration is 80 minutes. It will self-submit after 80 minutes, just so you know that. And there'll be no numerical computation type questions. It's basically all theory that you have to address. And again, I get back to all the things that, are really important, about studying for this test. The commentary PowerPoint presentations, the PowerPoints from Robbins, the practice tests that you see in topic 4. You review the participation activities, and again, the assignment number 2, if you go and review all the stuff that you needed to cover to do that assignment number 2, there's a lot of good, rich information there that'll help you do well on the test. Okay, and then review the Blackboard participation activities and look at the slide decks in each of those topics on Blackboard. And then if you need more specific information, you can always go to the video presentations that are there. And then, read the chapters in the, of the course e-text on Blackboard or through Blackboard to, getting to Pearson. Okay, so that's that piece. Again, if you have any questions, please, get them out to me early by email, and you'll be able to, get an answer directly from me to my RDP email. And then again, if I feel that it's a representative question that will help your colleagues, I will put something in announcements as well. But here's what I've learned over my career about organizational structure. It's key. There's no doubt about it. And you, it's a combination of understanding what is it that you're doing for the customer. What is your organization value proposition? That's what you're doing for the customer. What is your strategy? And what is the business model that you're using, to make that offering to the customer? And when you know that piece, then you really get a sense of, okay, now how do I structure so that I could be more effective and I could be more efficient and more effective in terms of, how do I structure so the customer has the best access to my products and services, the best access, to getting help from me. And then how do I make it easy for them to do business, with me? All that comes out of the structure that you're creating. And there's a link here that you can read. It's not mandatory, but Henry Mintzberg, he's out of McGill University in Canada here, and he's a guru on organizational structure and strategic planning, by the way, and has a lot of key insights to offer. So he's a good source of information in terms of a management principles theorist to be able to source. Okay, so here's my little view of, I create these business knowledge maps for this company that I have. And what this is saying is that, if you really understand, in terms of your framework, vision, mission, goals, objectives, and then you'll go down to the value proposition, the strategy, strategy and the business model. This is the crux of your business. And if your strategy is right, and your business model builds competitive advantage, then it's all about execution after that. And again, I keep reminding you on your value proposition, which is, what is it that you can address for your customer that keeps them awake at night in terms of, how can you give them gains in what they're doing or what they're getting from your products and services, and how can you relieve their pains? Inside of that, there's Tracy and Wiersma have created this, value disciplines, and it shows you that, you can start focusing your strategy right inside of your value proposition. So if you take a look at product leadership, well, 3M is probably known for, key products that it puts on the market. And what Tracy and Wiersma are saying is that you get one of these that really gives you that edge. Like customer intimacy, like Macy's department store in the US is very keen on creating this customer intimacy. So if you create your value proposition based on one of these 3 pillars, and then you're just at no less than market level in the other 2, because if you're less than market level, people will leave you. All right. So the best in one of these areas, and then at market level in the other. So in terms of, let's say McDonald's is, their key piece is operational excellence. I mean, everything's on timers, everything's on, mechanized operations to provide, their food services. But yet, they need to be at market level, with Burger King and Harvey's and whatever in customer intimacy, and they need to be at market level in terms of the types of products that they have. And you could see A&W come out with these better health-driven aspects of the meat that they produce and whatever. Well, McDonald's will not lose sight of that. They'll try to be as best as they can as good in product leadership, or even a little bit better, even though their main thrust is operational excellence. So that's what you need to take a look at. Now, we're going to get into in terms of understanding your strategy. And the thing is, a strategy is not it's not it doesn't stay there. All right, it improves. And the best thing that you can do is that if you can build inside of your structure of learning organization so that it can respond to the market, it learns and it responds, well, then you'll always increase your competitive advantage that way. And the guru on that is Peter Senge, and you can see down here the fifth discipline. And it really gives you a sense of how you can create your organizational design to be able to implicate learning in that piece, and your culture and sharing and leadership to be able to be that learning organization that can be flexible and can be responsive. And that, if you incorporate into your structure, now you've got a winning combination to have the best competitive advantage in the industry that you're competing in. So here are all the things. If you talk about Mintzberg, I told you he's a guru in strategic planning. Here what he says in his strategy model is that it's a fluid thing. You have this intended strategy that you prepared for, but then as you start meeting the barriers and you start learning, what's going on in your industry, you start shifting your approach, and you get to what we call or what he calls a realized strategy. All right. So what may happen there is that you may have to change your structure along the way based on changing your strategy. Right. And again, with Peter Senge, we just talked about that. If you have the learning organization aspect, well, then that will help you learn and adjust, on your strategy piece, and really understanding how relevant your value proposition is. That already kind of implicates what your structure should look like. And then, Alexander Osterwalder, one of my heroes, he's the guru on business model canvases. And what this is your business model itself, on how to adjust that. And again, as you adjust your business model, you have to adjust your structure to accommodate it. All right. So that's where you make your money, on your business model, and where you make your money, and where you spend your money. And if you organize your structure accordingly, again, you will be more effective, and you will be more efficient, and you will gain more competitive advantage. So this all ties together, and it all comes out of, where are we right now in the continuum of management principles, in terms of how our economies, our world economy is evolving, and how technology, in terms of changing the aspects of how we do business, comes about, and then how do we structure accordingly to run that. Okay. So this is the big key thing, and this is all you should remember, I guess, when it comes to structure. Form follows function, right? So what's function? Function is, okay, what's your mission? What's your value proposition? What's your strategy? How are you going to get to market? That's the function. That's what you start with. And then when you start with that, then you start saying, okay, now how do we develop the form? How do we develop the structure to be able to support, our operation? Okay. So, and it's still, absolutely relevant in the digital world. And, it's, the opposite just doesn't work. If we put form first with little or no attention to function, it's not going to work. All right. It won't function optimally for that specific purpose of your function. All right. So that's what you've got to keep in mind. Okay. Okay, we did assignment 2. I'm pretty happy so far. I'm almost finished doing the marking. But what I found, though, is that really, I put a video out to help you do that. Only 8 people reviewed this video. And what I'd recommend is that even though you may not have reviewed the video, please review it now. And again, review the video that I put out for assignment number 3. And you'll really get a sense of what I'm looking for. And what I'm looking for is really to help you adjust to how to meet the requirements in the market. How to respond to a request for proposal information. And the thing is, if you don't read the instructions, if you don't adhere to what your audience is looking for, you'll miss the opportunity. And really, that's what I'm trying to take you through. And that's why you might think, well, it's a bit overbearing in terms of structure and everything else. But I'll guarantee that if you follow these formulas, you're going to be a lot more successful in getting what you want, as you leave this program and you're working in your career. Okay, just a little bit. Now, I always have these helpful hints, hopefully. This article, and one simple habit boosts brain's connectivity, learning, and memory, writing by hand. So it's not old-fashioned, or at least maybe it's old-fashioned, but it's not without purpose that people take notes by hand. You'll remember more. All right. It makes those neuron connections for you. It'll help your learning. It'll help your memory. So that's the link to the article. I'm hoping that maybe some of you will have a look at that. And really, I'm all about trying to get you to understand that if you're in the top 20%, being elite performers in any position that you're at, in any career that you're at, you're always going to have employment. And in today's world, that's very, very important, especially, with technology changes that are going on that are going to replace workers. You'll always have, the edge on going forward and being employable. Okay. So again, for test number 1, I want to remind you, there's a lockdown browser test in topic 5 that you could make sure you do that and test your lockdown browser to know that it works. Test your webcam to know that it works. And if you have a Chromebook, if you're using a Chromebook, the platform doesn't respond as well to just a regular desktop or regular PC, so that go to the instructions that I put out here, in lockdown browser, and or go to your library and find out what you need to do in terms of having a Chromebook, because there's certain things that will help you going through. And one of the things that most students, when they can't really get things going and they think they've tested everything, the first thing to do is think about clearing your cache and reboot. All right, that's been a pretty tried and true method to be able to help you get on board to do the test. Okay, I talked about this a lot, and again, testing your webcam and response lockdown browser. You'll see this on Blackboard on topic 5 posting. There's the practice test. That's what it looks like. All right. I'm not going to ask for any questions here, but again, email me if you do have some questions. Now we're going to talk about triple bottom line. And why? Is because if you take a look at where we're going in terms of where we are on the continuum of management principles, we're getting into, on the empathy side and the trust side of where management principles need to be. And one of the best tools that you can use is triple bottom line. And triple bottom line is associated with corporate social responsibility as well, which we're going to talk about in other topics. But what is triple bottom line? Well, when it's people, planet, and prosperity. It used to be called people, planet, and profit, but now people are understanding, that prosperity is a little more representative of what you should be doing. So let's just start with prosperity, profit. You still have to make a profit, to be able to be sustainable in today's economics. All right. So that doesn't go off the table. But in previous generations, it was all about profit. And what happened is that people got left behind, and the planet, got partly destroyed from environmental conditions. So people is all about, what are you doing for society? and how are you going to give people, the opportunity to be able to have good quality of life, and to be able to be happy, and to be able to thrive. And how are your products and services going to contribute to that? And then on the planet side is that how are you going to be a good corporate social responsible organization that really doesn't deplete the environment. And the statistics are there at the rate we're going in terms of consumerism. um, by 2050, 3050, we're going to need three planets, to be able to sustain all our consumerism. So if we don't start dealing with sustainability in a big way, and here's where you come in, because you're future, decision makers, you're future leaders, and whatever that you can do, little by little, or in quantum leaps, if you could improve triple bottom line of an organization, everyone else is going to be, better off, and which means that you are also going to be a better ancestor. And I think that's where we need to start thinking about, being better ancestors. And if you take a look at most of the First Nations on all uh, in all parts of the world, they were always in tune with, looking at future generations, like the Iroquois population in North America, the First Nations. When they made a decision, they always took into consideration, where are we going to be in 7 generations? Will those decisions still be good for the seventh generation? Our grandchildren's grandchildren's children, kind of thing. And so that's where triple bottom line really kind of makes its way into the world. Okay, so the thing is that, is it a silver bullet? It's tough. It's hard, but it does, provoke deeper thinking about, capitalism and the future of capitalism. Are we doing the right things? Are we being good ancestors? So consider it as a transformation framework. It's a regenerative tool to help us, increase sustainability as we go forward, and eventually evolve towards, sustainable systems and models that really kind of put us in the future, where we're really looking after future generations. And the thing is that it doesn't account for the full cost of doing business. And the thing is, if you don't really take a look at sustainability, and so that you really, you need to really get a good sense of how that is. And that goes into corporate social responsibility, CSR. It's central to this segment of triple bottom line. And what CSR, or corporate social responsibility, is defined as, it's responsibility amongst organizations that meet the needs of their stakeholders, and a responsibility amongst the stakeholders to hold organizations accountable for their actions. All right, so that's where that piece is going. So public opinion is changing, and consumer purchasing power is putting pressure, and on organizations to really take a look at corporate social responsibility. And also stakeholders are rewarding organizations for the positive impacts and reprimanding the negative. So stakeholders are increasingly aware of not only the consequences business activity can have on the environment, on society, like the community and the economy, but also the importance of global issues such as climate change and social justice. And again, in the advent of artificial intelligence, there's going to be a lot of ethical challenges, and a lot of considerations towards social justice, apart from, environmental aspects, and then the business aspects, where profitability and comes in to play. Okay, so prosperity considers economic indicators over which an organization or a business has influence, and so paying livable wages, ethical sourcing, workplace health and safety, they all come into the triple bottom line theory. And how do you make that systemic in terms of, this is the way we do things. It's in the processes that we create to be able to, realize that, those outcomes. And in today's investment world, there's ethical investment stocks. So there's people who will only invest in what they call ethical investments. And what that does is those investments or those companies are big into what we call environmental social governance, and they're profitable because certain consumers now will focus on those, and so that it encourages them, to be able to do good corporate social responsibility and the right kind of triple bottom line management. Okay, so what is that again? ESG, the environmental factors, the three pillars: carbon emissions, waste management; the social factors like labor standards, human rights, diversity, community engagement; and then governance factor like board diversity and executive compensation and shareholder rights. So these are all the things. And the thing is that this is rising in our global economy. Okay, I'm going to talk a little bit more. I want to move ahead because we got a lot to cover. So triple bottom line is not easy. In some cases, it's still trying to gain recognition. It needs to quantify social and environmental aspects, and sometimes it's not easy to do. Economists are really trying hard to do that and put pricing, on different things, and that's why we have carbon tax and those kind of things. It could be legally compulsive at times. Sometimes people actually, put a spin on it and say we're really doing, triple bottom line activities, but we're not, and they call that greenwashing. It's ingenuine efforts, clashing objectives, and then difficult to implement. So there's all kinds of challenges there, but it's all about you as a future leader becoming a good ancestor. Start paying attention to the environment that brings out slower, longer term imaginative thinking about choices we're making for ourselves and our future generations. Okay, so that's where that piece goes. And again, it gets back to Rita McKnight. So about the empathy side of the management principles that really need to come of age to really help us manage through all the challenges that we're going to see in our future. So how do we make personal, empathetic connection with future generations? I mean, that's the key. Sorry, Rita McGrath. So if you want to know anything more about empathy, she's the professor to be able to read up about, and we'll give you more information about that. So at the end of the day, I mean, this is what it's all about. Okay, in terms of sustainability, what we're social, economic, environmental meet. You mean here's where you want to be managing. Okay, so let's get right into organizational chart examples. And so there's a software that you can do a trial on called SmartDraw. And when you do your organizational chart for your team input, I'd like you to kind of, I don't want to see it hand drawn. Even if you do any kind of like PowerPoint or a different kind of software like that to make it out. And the more that you can make it a little more specific in terms of what's the position, that would be great as well. And then what's the area? The position in the area in the organizational chart is really important. And what I want to take into consideration for this topic is the impact of organizational structure on layout. All right. So then you have this structure that you've created, but now you translate that into the physical location in terms of layout. And it's just amazing on how you can manage layout to increase effectiveness, to increase quality capability, to increase efficiency, just based on how you set up your process to be able to get to an end product or an end service. And I can't say enough about that piece. And again, I've worked in, I was a process engineer, right? So I'm a key convert. I mean, when we reestablished process, and especially when we did it in terms of business process improvement, when I was in charge of that at TELUS, we had what they call workout costs, and in some areas we've taken from 20%, and believe it or not, 40% of the cost of production based on just engineering the actual process, the actual layout of what we're doing. And what you need to understand is that there's a difference between process layout and product layout, right? And you could see that this is highlighted. So this is important. So process layout is where similar items are grouped together, right? Like custom work, where you'll have, say, in a carpenter shop, you'll have all the saws together, you'll have all the planers, you'll have all the router equipment. A product layout is where equipment, tools, and machines are located according to how a product is made. And then that depends on the type of product, right? So if you've got a very sophisticated product like an aircraft, well, that aircraft isn't going down a production line. It's staying right there, and everything has to come to the aircraft in terms of assembly and those kind of things. So that that's a product layout in some cases. Okay, so here's where process design comes in. So you look at the process, and in some cases, you have a very flexible job shop, meaning, let's talk about the emergency room with surgery. It needs to be very, very flexible. Everything has to come to it, right? You're not moving the patient from room to room. Whereas, at the other end of the continuum is very inflexible. So you're purifying water, and you're working with large quantities, and there's no variability around that. It has to meet your key standards. So on one side, it's your process, and then on the other side, it's that how much are you producing. So you can see that on very flexible shop, you'll have a high variety of routines. In an emergency room, you have anesthesia, and you have the surgery part, and you have the all those pieces, so that you need to be structured around that, for that. But if you're producing steel, or you're producing vinegar, what you're doing is you have a high quantity with absolutely low variety, right? Here it's in the emergency room, low quantity, it's one patient. Down here in water production, you're producing thousands of liters per minute. So that's how you have to kind of look at this piece. So you can see that breaks it down to, in the layout, if you're putting together an airplane, that's a fixed process. It stays in one place. Okay. If you're building furniture, well, that's a process layout. You have all the different types of machineries in various areas, and you're going from area to area. Now, if you have an assembly that's a little bit complicated, well, then what you'll have is you'll have cellular. So you have different cells that are together, and then from a product point of view, then you have different workstations. So the layout should put together the people and the processes that collaborate the most, on this piece. So the fixed position. So here's the one patient with a many variety of steps that have to be done. The product remains in one place. Workers and equipment come to the site, and then you're limited by space at the site. You got different materials, you have different volume materials needed. It's dynamic. So that's a fixed position process layout. A process-oriented layout, I talked about that a little bit. So here's one for a carpentry shop. You'll actually go from sawing things, to the drill presses, to the tool room to do the final assembly. Scheduling can be difficult. The setup, material handling, the labor can be high. Those are the things. And then the cellular layout, this is what they call a U-shaped, and this is one of the better areas. There's different tasks that get done, but there's people that interact and can, with training, can be intertrained to be able to support each other. So there's a lot more support in terms of helping each other go from input to output. But all it comes down to, though, on organizational structures, from the people, the technology, the environment, structure, that's the process of developing and changing, that need to deal with the factors affecting organizational behavior. That's what that's all about. Okay, and so you can see that there's a key here. So you can see that, the more centralized something is, well, there's the less number of contacts, that you interact with. But the more centralized again, so the people amongst themselves, can collaborate and know each other. And then the more centralized, the less closeness. So, so you'll have, the key people running, the process, and very far from the actual line where something's getting produced in terms of a product or service for the customer. Okay. And the thing is that organizational structure, like I said, it's the backbone of all operating procedures and workflow. So not only do you have, the components, but part of that structure are the operating procedures, how the work flows, how it's measured going through. So a clear structure allows every team member to be involved. And again, to build an org structure, you need to consider where you are in the the life cycle of your business, because, if you're a growing business, you may need other capabilities as you grow. And so that will affect your actual capabilities around organizational structure. Your goals will change, how you're positioning in terms of, what you're going to do for your customers. So one of the things, though, is just don't lose sight of triple bottom line. And the creative thinking process is really key, all right, there in terms of, you prepare, you consume various sources of information, and then what you do is, you incubate to see, hey, will this product, be viable, or will this service be enough? And then you learn that, hey, this is all coming together. So now you verify, and then now you will pilot that piece and then get it into full production mode. So that's what it looks like. And again, form follows function. So form is the design of the object or the building. The form comes, the use of the objects is what's key, and that's where it goes. Okay. So this is how you break down, organizational structure. There's two aspects. What are the common types of organizational structure? And again, we've covered this a little bit in assignment 2. But then inside of each one of those, what are the basic elements of structure design? So we're going to talk about what is work specialization, what's departmentation, what is chain of command, what is span of control, how do we put this together? Is it centralized or decentralized, and how formal is it, right? And that will impact, each and every one of these different types of structures. Okay, so you can see this is underlined in yellow, departmentalization. So let's talk about that. That's really key. So what you're doing then is that, you're breaking down the operation, and so that you may have, a function like marketing that will actually look at the market and say, this is what kind of service or product is needed. And then they will pass that on to the engineering to be able to come up with how we're going to build that, and then so on and so forth, right? Now, work specialization, that's how responsibilities are split between employees. So the thing is, smaller work activities are assigned in digestible tasks. So the best, application of that is the assembly line for auto production. You'll have maybe one person, and all they do is, they place wheels on the vehicles coming through. It's very specialized, and everything is set up to be the most efficient and the most effective. Now, there's some ergonomics that you have to deal with, and there's some motivational things, and behavioral things that you need to do. But, in some cases, work specialization is very key, right? So the most common results of improper specialization, low efficiency and burnout, right? And, that's really what I talked about. What chain of command is, it's a system of passing instructions and reporting within an organization. So let's look at the CEO. has a chain of command. So the CEO has, a product manager, and that product manager then reports to the CEO and carries out what the CEO wants to do. And then this product manager now has general managers that carry out. So that's the chain of command, right? It distributes the power, supports knowledge sharing, encourages employee accountability. That's what it's about. Now let's talk about unity of command. And this is really key. And this is kind of what is the distinction between a hierarchical organization and a matrix organization. So in a hierarchical organization, an employee is only responsible to one supervisor. In a matrix organization, that person has two bosses, right? And sometimes that could get complicated. So unity of command really gets back to the type of organization based on what functions it's satisfying. So if you take a look at the fire service, you have a direct unity of command. Why? Because execution is so important in terms of risk of life or property, right? So it needs to have that unit command principle to be able to make sure that people execute, very effectively because of the risk involved. So span of control, well, this regulates the number of direct reports, and where span of control has really taken some evolution is through computerization. And AI is even going to increase that piece. So what that means is that you could have one manager in a control center that manages 100 people, right? And why is because there's the actual computer is actually tracking the performance and the quality of the work for that manager, so that manager has reports coming in and then can focus accordingly. Whereas a narrow span of control, this is where we're gonna learn what is a structured problem and an unstructured problem that an organization has to solve. And normally narrow span of controls are related to unstructured problems. So let's talk about the O-rings that went bad on the the space module, and what it is that you would have people that specialists in O-rings, and they would only their manager would be a manager with very narrow span of control, because the focus is there, and the manager, it's herself or himself, doesn't have the skills to be able to solve that, and there's some creativity that's needed to be involved, and that's where narrow span of control really comes into play. Okay, so there's different types, and you notice there's a little key here, right? So small, medium enterprises, smaller, medium enterprises, it doesn't have a lot of resources. So normally what happens then, there's one manager that has a large number of subordinates, right? And this is more related to an entrepreneur type of operation, or what we would call an adhocracy, or a business that's just starting to grow, and everybody needs to be around solving the problem. So there's one owner or whatever, and maybe 10 to 20 subordinates. All right. Whereas now managers with fewer subordinates is a narrow piece, and then there's the flat organization, and that's streamlined organization. That's where there's fewer layers, and what that allows people is motivated employees to be able to use the best of their creativity and capability, to be innovative and get things done, and really put out their best for satisfying what the key customer needs are for each particular service or product that's being produced. Okay, so span of control, here's some more specific information about that. I'm not going to go through that again. And again, determining appropriate span for efficiency and effectiveness. So employee experience and training, the more trained, the larger span. Similarity of employee tasks, the larger span. So it'll give you an idea. So you need to go through these pieces. And the thing is yeah, let's leave it at that. In terms of formalization now, this is where we have structured and unstructured problems. So let's look at McDonald's. It's very structured, right? And why? Because you know what you're producing and you know which steps that you need to do. So it's highly formalized and it has standardized procedures and rules, and that's how it's able to to get done. And again, just understand what a gangplank is, and what that is that at the top of the organization, you may not be able to G may not be able to talk to A, but G has the capability in the a parallel organization to talk to their counterparts. So that's what they call a gangplank. F can talk to C, G can talk to D, E can talk to B. So the same level can communicate with each other directly for quick communication. Uh, and again, here, this is, mock bureaucracy. That's a key one that you should understand what this is all about. This is Goldner's 3 bureaucratic patterns. So mock bureaucracy is, think about, a union, all right? So a union can enforce the collective agreement on the management of the company. So they're part of the bureaucracy, but they're not part of the structure in terms of the management structure. But that is a mock bureaucracy, all right? Uh, sorry, that's a representative bureaucracy, the union. The mock bureaucracy is, some third party can, Greenpeace can actually, stop, say, organizations from hunting whales. All right, so that's a mock bureaucracy. Okay, McKinsey 7S framework. This is probably one of the better frameworks I ever used personally in terms of understanding, efficiency and effectiveness of the inside of an organization. And if you take a look at, the the hard S's, this is the structure itself, the strategy that's being imposed, the systems that's going on. The shared values is the culture, the core values, the skills and the style of management and the staff. So this would be a good a model to be able to take a look at and understand the STAR model. So its structure determines the organization, where the power is placed in terms of what's going on. We talked about formalization. We're going to just talk about a little bit about centralization and decentralization. And what I found is that it has a lot to do with the organizational's life cycle. And in most cases, it starts where it's very centralized. And as the organization grows, it needs to accommodate, its customers a lot better. So it will decentralize, and then it'll get to a point where the standardization is violated. So it'll centralize again. So it goes back and forth. So those are the kind of things that you need to worry about. But centralized organization ensures greater control over business processes. Most importantly, it includes highly experienced professionals, that place, the constraints on the operations, because of the knowledge of knowing, what is really important to the customer. But the biggest drawback of a centralized organization is the amount of time for decision making. If you've got a very sort of variable, customer base, and it keeps on changing, well, you need to be responsive, and you can't afford, you can't afford the time to make those decisions. So then you need a less centralized organization where people can make decisions really, at the edge of the organization. So that's where decentralized comes in. It's a lower level employees pinpoint issues and make decisions, before communicating to upper management. So especially on a geographical basis, in the Northwest, Northeast regions, not only will the Northeast region maybe have a different kind of customer, but they want it now, and so that the manufacturing and the sales organizations have to make these decisions, right away, but then communicate, to the president of what was being done, because if there's some learning, they could probably pass on some advantages to, the other players. So, but it does bring coordination challenges and higher expenses, because think of it, there's a lot of, redundancy, across these, so what'll happen is, look at how many sales and marketing organizations, and you may have, less efficiency in what's going on there. So again, centralization versus decentralization, it's a big and long-term issue in business. So centralization in decision making is concentrated. Decentralization, degree at the lower level employees is done, and employee empowerment, more authority to employees to make decisions. So that's key. So here, this graph kind of says it all. And so if you want to be responsive, you really need decentralization. Why? Because of immediacy, right? If you want absolute reliability, so let's say that, you're producing products for, medical purposes. Well, you want centralization to make sure that you're compliant to standards. But if you want to be efficient, if you really want to get down to lower, unit costs or whatever, centralization will probably come into to a better way of standardizing, and syndication is just another word for standardization. All right. So if, that really needs to come together. And then, if you've got a continuous thing going on, again, centralization, because, you can control everything from a central control room, so to speak. And then you detach, when you go out and you have other areas, they're compliant through that centralization as well. So that's key. So again, take a look at decision making. This is highlighted, right? So one body of management decides procedures and develops strategies. A lot of people in the organizations that I work for, they were said to be in the ivory tower, and didn't really have an idea of what was going on with the customer. So those are the kinds you go across. But then, to be decentralized, management at every level makes the decision in their department and their team. So that's really what's going on. So when we're talking about, structure now, we talk about mechanistic or organic. And, Henry Mintzberg talks about, mechanistic as what he calls a machine bureaucracy, like the military, versus organic, which is an adhocracy. Adhocracy means, it's a free-for-all. They just want to get the job done. They want the customer satisfied. So, have a look at, what's going on in a mechanistic organization. High specialization, rigid departmentalization, clear chain of command, narrow spans of control, centralization, high formalization. So we've really covered all these pieces. But on a organic organization or adhocracy, it depends on collaboration. There needs to be adaptable duties. Everybody's covering for each other. There's few rules so that they can solve problems a lot quicker. There's informal communication, a lot of decentralization going on, and a lot of wider span of control. So that's how all this information comes to a point where you can understand why these different elements have to change for a particular structure. Okay, we talked about that. So here's an example. A mechanistic organization is McDonald's, all right? Highly standardized, hierarchical, centralized structure. Follow clear instructions. Whereas Google Alphabet, well, those people have to be created. They're project oriented in terms of designing offerings, so the company values creativity and adaptability. So teams often work, on a cross-functional basis. Decision making a lot more distributed. So here's the key factors to give you an idea. So types of organizational structure, we come across that. So functional, in terms of accounting or production, divisional in terms of either geographical, or if you look at Procter & Gamble, sometimes it's product families. So divisional, you might have health products versus cleaning products. Team-based, group that serves particular goals. A flatarchy, flat organization, large employee autonomy, and then a matrix. We talk about that, where employees work in multiple departments with multiple superiors. And this is particularly when you need, key input from all functions, from, to be able to make sure that everything's covered by the time a project is satisfied, all aspects of the diversity of the customer requirements are satisfied. Okay, not going to talk about that. So here's how you can use these pieces to create your structure, for your participation activities and examples of these pieces. All right, and then again, a little bit more on the levels of management. And here's where you have the the upper management or the high level, the middle management, and the lower level management. But here's the thing about this. We talked about the 4 functions of management. Leadership is big in this level, and why? It's because they're right at the crux. They're right at the interface of the customer. So they need to really kind of control those behaviors, or manage those behaviors, I should say, to be able to get to those outcomes. And this particular level, research says, is the most trusted level in the organization. So what you really need to remember about that is that upper management and middle management need to provide the utmost of support in terms of keeping lower level management informed and connected to what's going on, so that they have the answers for the employees, at the line area. Okay, so we talk about line and staff. So line is basically, they're the doers. Staff managers, they're support activities. So a staff manager might be HR, where they bring HR support to a particular production operation. Or it could be engineering, where they bring, key specific, information and capability to problem solving to people that are working on the production line, to be able to fix their production or whatever. So that's the difference between that piece. Philip Selznick, is really big on that in terms of, he's talking about, critical decisions of the organization change its structure. Again, so that's function, right? Critical decisions is part of strategy, and form, structure follows, function, right? That's where that goes. We talked about this, plank pieces where these workers can talk to each other. This is Fayol's organizational pyramid. I'm not going to talk too much about that. Not going to talk about this one too much, but I just wanted to kind of introduce this because it's coming in future topics. Michael Porter really coined the term, value chain, and really, how does this all come together? And you can see that, this is the primary activities that are going on, and this is the support to each one of those primary activities. And just to know that this is, coming to view. I'm not going to talk about that. And just understand as well is that sometimes, you can have a circular structure where the CEO is right in the middle of it and has, purview out of everything. But then, where we're going, the more prevalent post-pandemic and driven by global trading is network structure. And that's because, you're hiring expertise throughout the world and bringing in a specified capability for a limited period of time to do what it needs to do, to give, again, the organization some capability and some, competitive advantage capability. So when we talk about, network organizations and we talk about outsourcing, bringing in a particular hire or bringing in a particular capability. So let's say that you outsource your accounting to an accounting specialization firm because you just don't want to deal with that. What you have to remember, though, is that this in red here, never outsource your core competence. Whatever's your core competence is what gives you competitive advantage over your competition. It's what you do. It's your secret sauce. And if you outsource, the making of your secret sauce all you're doing is you're training somebody to compete with you in the future. So just remember, that piece. All right. Oh, and I think that's really what we're going to cover on this piece. Yeah. All right. So that's it for, topic 4. I'm going to take a 5-minute break. Okay. It's 2:04 right now, Red Deer time. I'm going to take a 5-minute break, 6-minute break. I'll be back at 2:10, and then we'll cover topic 5. Okay. And if you have any questions, put them on the chat. Or again, if you have any questions, email me and I'd be happy to answer your questions. Okay, I'm back. So topic 5 is how to improve operations. And again, we can't kind of separate, structure from operations. I mean, the structure is there to facilitate the operations. And at the end of the day, operations is what gets to the organizational outcomes based on what management principles are in play to be able to manage the behaviors to get to those outcomes. So it's all part of the same thing. So it's really important. And what you can do is sorry. So what yeah, I'll leave it at that for now, and then I'll come back to it. So how do we improve operations? I can't say enough about production operations. If you really want to be a good manager, you really need to understand, how your products and services are created and supported and given to your customers. So that's where it comes. We talked about the test already. Just an introduction to artificial intelligence again. You're going to see this on your assignment number 3. And again, just to remind you that there is a recording out there on the on announcements. You have the link to the YouTube channel to be able to take a look at what's required for this piece. But I really believe that this can really help you as you leave this program because it'll give you a sense of how to prepare. And again, what I said earlier is that AI may not replace you or replace your job, but someone who is using it may replace you. And so that it's really part of, what you need to assimilate to be able to be a better business practitioner, to be a better manager. Okay, so it's here. Look at this, market growth. So AI market projected to grow approximately over 1 trillion by 2030. And there's all kinds of investments going. It's just happening. It's just unbelievable. I come across another article this past week where it is here. The workforce impact. Look at this. AI technologies could automate around 30% of work activities globally by 2030. This ethical focus around AI. We get back to triple bottom line and the social aspects of triple bottom line. Gartner says 63% of organizations plan to prioritize ethical and responsible AI practices. It's going to be a big deal. It's going to be a lot of challenges. And what you need to understand is the distinction in AI of agent versus tool. All right. So an AI tool is something you control, it's something you use. It may be an AI assistant that helps you do your job, but you set the boundaries for that. As soon as we get into an agent, well, then, we could have to the point where the agent is doing machine learning and there's no boundaries. And that agent could probably go beyond the goals of the originator and cause some disastrous effects. So that's where you need to really always understand, where is it a tool or is it an agent, and how much autonomy does that agent have to be able to get you into trouble. Okay. And so this article here, you don't have to read it for the test or anything, but it'll really give you an idea of what's going on. Helpful hints, hopefully. To be a good manager, it's all about success habits. I read this book. It's an amazing book. Changed my life somewhat. All right. And James Clear is really good at kind of laying it out for you in terms of how to set up these habits and how to grow better habits as well, and those kind of things. Okay, so what's due for topic 5? Well, type A personality survey for person rebels, surveys, time management, personal empowerment, and they're due May 21. And then there's going to be these are 2 group exercises that are due May 21 for topic 5. And understand that, you should be looking at Robbins chapter 13 PowerPoint as well to help you do that. And so we're going to cover that into, and it's basically, creating a flow diagram and answering some questions on 5A, and then looking at, calculating labor productivity and material productivity. Now, so I'm going to kind of give you some, background on why are we doing this, right? And that's coming up. So chapter 13, it defines operations management and explains the role. And it defines the nature and the purpose of the value chain management, which we're going to cover a lot more in future topics, with Michael Porter, and how value chain management is done. This is the whole underpinning for the supply chain management right now, especially global supply chain management. And if you understand this, you'll be able to really expand your horizons on how you get things done in your organization, because all organizations are intertwined with certain supply chains, either for raw materials or part of a supplier inside of a like an Amazon group supplying your product or service to customers. So it's a good chapter to really kind of get yourself familiar with. So let's look at the transformation process. All right. So what is a transformation process? You start with something and you end with an output. So you have inputs, people, technology, capital, equipment, materials, information, and you go through this transformation process, and then you create these goods or services. So let's talk about a bakery. You're making bread. So you have people that are know how to put bread together. You have flour, water. You have some investment going that, and then you put that that bread, the dough through an oven, and you create, an actual loaf of bread to get outputs. All right. So that's what that's all about. And understand the difference, in transformations between goods and services. So goods are tangible. They have a physical form, right? They can be stored in inventory. Their ownership is transferred, and that's key. So let's go to this one. So services, they're getting better at that because you can show, virtual reality now, say on a website on, what, for say landscaping, what your backyard's going to look like. So it gets a little more tangible now. All right. But the thing is that while people are doing this landscaping, they own everything until it's done, and that's when the ownership gets transferred to the customer. So the customer doesn't, have as much leverage over the supplier in a service until it's totally delivered, right? And they have to be a lot more involved in that output, the customers, and time is important. And in any kind of service, there's always delays that come into play. Either it's from missing a 10-cent part to the bad weather, those kind of things. And quality is based on customer perception. So you always have to manage the customer expectations for a service right from the start, all the way through the process, and then near the end when the offering is complete. So that's the piece where quality for goods can be measured by defects and deviations in manufacturing, and delays can be tolerated through bridging delays in terms of having additional inventory and those kind of things. So you need to understand those idiosyncrasies between goods and services to be able to understand that. And now from a perspective point of view, we're into the classical management area where we're going to learn a little more and see what comes into play, especially where we're starting to, from the scientific piece, starting to talk about measuring productivity and those kind of things. But, okay, I talked to you about form follows function. So here's where you start on the onion model. What do you need to do and why? So the function is what, why, and then you take a look at, all right, okay, what kind of structure do I need to put together? And based on that structure, what does the layout look like? And then based on the structure and the layout, what are the process, workflow, policies, and procedures? And then based on that, what gets measured gets done, all right? So you can see that this is all part of the form right here. So you understand the form of, the components of the form versus the function. And you got to get this right first. You got to understand what is it, you're doing, and why are you doing it, and how are you going to do it, and when are you going to do it. And then you lay out the form, to get the right behaviors, doing the right things right. Okay, so doing the right things, that's being effective. Doing things right, that's being efficient. Again, all these are elements of form right here. Okay, so let me kind of get back to the functions of operation management, and why they're so key. Forecasting is a make or break function. If you forecast that you're going to sell a whole pile of widgets, and you don't, well, then all of a sudden now you're facing inventory costs that you never anticipate. Or in terms of capacity planning, if you don't have the right capacity operation, then what you're doing is you're not reaching economies of scale. When you reach economies of scale, you can manage better product unit costs. Scheduling, it's key. It's market timing, it's availability, it's customer satisfaction. Managing inventory costs can make up 35 to 65% of a product unit cost in terms of working capital. That can make or break an organization, right? And that's why we get into just-in-time inventory and those kind of things, because it manages the optimum amount of inventory. Production process, that's where you deal with the productivity, employee satisfaction, profitability. There's all these pieces, employee motivation, productivity, fulfillment, and employee satisfaction, location and facility as well, that has a big bearing on costs and customer satisfaction. Buying materials, that we get into supply chains, and then facility layout, efficiency, and effectiveness that I talked about. So there's a lot to really kind of get your head around, to be a good leader, a good manager, because of all the implications of the form that has to go together, to supply or to support the function. And this is just a look at where Canada is. If you take a look at where we are now, this portion here, we are a service economy. We don't manufacture very much, and we're mainly prime products in terms of oil and agriculture and those pieces, and then a whole pile of services. And we're good at services. And the Canadian economy, we are an export nation. Our percentage of GDP for exports is much higher than many, many countries. We may not, be as large as some countries, but per capita, it's a large part of our economy. Okay, so now I'm going to start getting you ready to complete participation activities 5A and 5B. So we need to get into the nitty-gritty and why. I think that's on the next slide, or the next few slides. I'll tell you why. But essentially, you really need to measure. What gets measured gets done. So based on measuring your productivity, you benchmark, you see how well you're doing to the industry competitors. And if your productivity is low, well, that means your costs are high, and your profits are low. So what you need to do is measure productivity in terms of output per worker. All right, and we're gonna talk about that. But first, let's talk about the transformation. So our 5A is, you're going to be building a gingerbread house, and in that gingerbread house, well, you've got some physical manufacturing. That's a transformation. You're going to sell that gingerbread house, so that's exchange. So those are two key transformations that you need to identify in your participation 5A and 5B. Okay. And what you need to understand too is step 3 in 5A, you need to calculate value add. Here's the formula. So you take a look at, the price of your offering. So I think we're going to talk about, you're going to sell it for $3, and then you're going to add up the cost to make one gingerbread house and how the materials and the production. And so the price minus the cost is the value add. And you need to calculate that, okay? All right, so here's why we're covering this. So if we understand transformation, then we know how to calculate productivity. We know what we need to measure. If we understand productivity, then we can calculate profitability because productivity has an impact on profitability. If we can increase productivity, well, then we can positively affect what we call comparative advantage. And for you people that have not gone through microeconomics yet, comparative advantage is an advantage that we have to be able to export that product because we could do it better, faster, cheaper than anybody else, right? So if we can positively affect comparative advantage, well, then we can affect the Canadian trade surplus. All right. So now, by increasing productivity and comparative advantage, they're hand in hand. More productivity, more comparative advantage. We can increase our standard of living because we can bring more value in, to the country. By increasing our standard of living, we can increase quality of life. Right. So this is all coming through, and it all starts with management theories, then management principles, and then tools and techniques, and getting to being a productive organization and a productive nation. So value added, well, it's got a lot of advantages in terms of additional features or economic value. It helps companies attract more customers. It's a difference between a product's price to consumers and the cost of producing it. And the value can be added in several different ways. Just the fact that you have a great world brand will bring added value. People will pay more for it because, people know that, look at myself. I went out, I bought a Honda lawnmower. Why? Because I know a Honda has some of the best core competencies in engines. Right. And, it's the brand that affected my purchase. All right. And I paid a little more. I could have bought a regular Canadian Tire lawnmower, but I didn't. Right. So I saw the brand name, as a way of added to me that it would be less maintenance and more quality of operation and all those kind of things. Okay. So again, understand what your transformation is. You're going to have to calculate the added value, and essentially, it's an input to output process flow chart that you have to create. So you're going to have some inputs, you're going to put something together, and then you're going to have outputs. And in that process, you're going to have resources and skills and knowledge, and then you're going to have some controls. What gets measured gets done, right? So how do businesses improve productivity? Well, profits can increase without causing inflation. Employees can receive higher wages. Companies can offer more competitive prices. So improving productivity has a big impact on going on. And productivity is related to good, well-trained people and operational variables. So, you as a manager, you need to focus on the behaviors and the capabilities of people, and then on the operation variables itself. And now we talk about division of labor. And I think I've mentioned that a little bit, but that's a separation of tasks. So the more that you can, bring down, the task and specialize it, then the better that you can control the quality and the cost and everything else to a point, right? To a point. Okay. So division of labor, you're breaking up a production process into small tasks so that each worker performs a small portion of the overall job. Right? That's what it looks like. But here's all the benefits: increased efficiency, higher productivity, innovation and improvement, economies of scale, a greater interdependence, like specialization often leads to increased interdependence among workers, skills development. So it has a lot of benefits, right? Clarity. And then why do we look at a process flow diagram? That's how we start understanding how this all comes together. We have the overall view of what's going on, so we can see, where the deficiencies are. So we have, this visual representation that gives us a lot more clarity, and we can then say, hey, and that's what I did at TELUS, when I was looking at the business process improvement project. We had people come into a room that were what we would call the internal supplier to the internal customer, like a handoff. And they would look at this process and the internal customer said, well, you know what? You as my supplier, if you change this little piece here, I could improve, my outputs because of this, and vice versa. So that's how you learned how you could improve things. And then you get improved communication. They could talk to each other now. They could collaborate a lot better. They had documentation now where they saw what steps were in this overall transformation, to get a service to the customer. And then identify bottlenecks and get some root cause analysis going on and say, oh, now we understand, it's this machine that is, causing us delays, and let's change that machine, or let's fix it, or whatever. And then do some optimization and quality control and process improvement. And then once that process flow diagram is together and it's optimized, then you can use it to train and bring on people, and so they understand what they're dealing with. And then make sure that you can comply to regulatory requirements, and you have more accountability, and make decisions because it's all in front of you. And a lot of times now, these processes now are digitized, so you can actually see them real time and what's going on, and take measurement in various places to be able to improve things. And then project management, planning and resource allocation can be made based on a flow diagram. So what are you going to be required to do in activity 5A? So first of all, determine the main components of the process. I helped you out on that. Here it is. All right, that's the basic steps. All right, and then order the activities. So you start with the initial step and that, but then put the process flow diagram together, and understand that I want you to use these icons for different parts of the process. So, if it's, if it's a information required, it's this parallelogram. Here's where you start. So you use a circle to start the process. You use the circle to show the end of the process. You show this diamond to know that you have to make this particular decision. And so what you're going to do is you make the connections between those activities. So you draw the arrows to connect. So you show arrows, how it all goes, from one step to the other. You indicate the beginning and the end of the process, like I said, and you review that business process diagram as a team. So here are the steps, and here's what a typical process flow diagram looks like, and I want you to emulate this. So you're going to use a circle to start, to create, this this product, and then you're going to show at the end, that it's sold to the customer. All right. Okay. So again, one, you identify the transformations. I've kind of told you about that. One is, the building of the gingerbread house. Another one is selling it. Then you map that process. And now based on that map process to build and sell your gingerbread, you're going to have some assumptions, and that's where you're going to calculate productivity. All right. Okay. So again, I've taken you through the steps. You've got to identify these pieces. You've got to calculate what the value add is, and you're going to use that, in slide 3 of 70 in the topic 5 slide deck. I don't know. I hope that's the same. Yeah, let me see the slide deck. So I don't think, I'll make sure that this is the same slide number because I've changed some of these slides. Okay. And then 5B is that now that you take a look at it, you're going to use these parameters to calculate labor productivity. And I'm not going to leave you on a lurch here. So here's where the ingredients are to calculate the costs. You only need 3-gram wafer crackers at a cost of 10 cents each, 1 jujube at 1 cent each. It will only take you 1 worker to build this gingerbread house, 2 minutes of labor at 33 cents a minute. And then you show your calculations on what's going on, and then look at the example. So I'll just show you this example here. I've done this now with different numbers, but if you plug the numbers, that I've given you, like the $3 each, and the ingredients, and then the labor, I want you to calculate, these particular pieces. and so that, the formula's there, the units are there. So if you understand how this got put together, then you'll be able to just translate your factors in here. 3 graham Wakers at 10 cents each, one jujube at 1 cent each, gingerbread sale at $3 each, and 2 minutes labor at that. So if you put those numbers into here, you'll be able to calculate this out to get to 5B, right? So this should make it fairly straightforward. If you do have a problem, email me. I'll walk you through it again. Okay. Excuse me. Okay, so what we do is for profit, we take a look at the total measure of productivity. For people, we just look at we look at the total measure of productivity here in terms of quality of life index. These are just major type of productivity measures for global reasons to see what's going on. Like for planet, we want the total measure of productivity output over your carbon footprint. So you can start comparing, country to country. You can start comparing, the productivity country to country, and then you can start looking at benchmarking in terms of, productivity in the industry. So that's what these figures are about. This is just an example of another way of doing a process chart, and they call these swim lanes. So you can see for different functions, there's different steps, going through. This is one piece of work I did with MacHall Mobility, and once we did this with their employees, they totally understood what was going on, and then they can say, "Oh, we need to improve this," or "Oh, yeah, we need to improve the delivery," and that's really what helps. What you also need to understand is that we're into digitization now. There's some physical parts of what goes on, and then there's some digital parts that goes on. And how do you keep in touch with your customers is that you need to know where they are. You need to find them where they are. So these are the various touch points, in terms of dealing with your customers. This is the actual, sales process. A customer becomes aware of your product. They start considering it. They actually buy it. They need some service. And then you don't want to let them go away. You want them to be loyal. You want them to be, advocates. You want them to be champions for you. So on the digital side, you got their email. You provided them a loyalty program. You offer them more offerings. You survey them to keep them going through. All right. So this is a really important map to be able to understand that now when you're building a process for customers, be it product or service, you need to consider all aspects of the customer journey and deal with them where they are. Okay. A little more on different types of productivity. We talked about total productivity. That's, what did we do in terms of, total measure product? It's all goods and services, all the outputs, right, over the inputs. But sometimes you want to look at multi-factor productivity. And so let me just define total productivity right now. It's calculated by dividing the outputs produced by a company by the inputs used in the production process. But the common inputs, labor, capital, natural resources, over the outputs are, a number of goods and services. But look at this now. The unit is dollars, all right, or currency, a specific currency. That's how you do that, in terms of. But multi-factor productivity is a measure of economic performance that compares the amount of output to the amount of combined inputs used to produce that output. There's that piece. And then there's partial productivity. Sometimes you just want to see, what, you want to narrow down one part of productivity that you could improve. So you look at just one class of inputs or factors, and then you measure that in terms of, productivity over input. So these are the formulas, all right, for different types of productivity. You don't, we're not going to get into that. We're, just understand the general concepts of productivity, and that'll be fine. But that's where we're going with this piece. And then understand that there's different levels of automation. All right. So when you have, a high number of productivity, well, then you have a fixed automation. So, high number of units. So that's where you're kind of, refining oil. Whereas down here, where you have, a low quantity that you're producing, but a high variety, well, then you're down to really standard and conventional machinery. You're doing it step by step. So that has a different uh, bent on, how much production flexibility and how much production capacity you need based on the type of customer and the type of offering that you're creating. How can I talk about this? And this is just information on this piece. Okay, and just a reminder, the best thing that you can do to get ready for test number 1 is to go through the readings that I provided you to go through, the 3 main documents, for test for assignment number 2 in terms of, the history of management principles, the document connecting the theorists with the tools, and then the rebel surveys with the theorists. Those 3 documents will really help you understand what's going on and be prepared for test number 1. Right. So here I just put this information again, for your view going through. So that's basically, what it is for topic 5. Again, the participation activities 5A and 5B. I hope that I gave you enough detail to be able to do that. Go through this presentation that's available, on the topic 5 commentary, and understand that if you have any questions, please email me and I'll help you get through this. Okay. Okay. I just have a question here. I said, would there be a possibility of shifting towards the other economies in the future, especially with new government planning to optimize Canada's energy industry? Absolutely. Renell, it's this is what it's all about. It's really kind of creating new opportunities. So let me just go back to this piece right here. Here's a really good start, to kind of address your. Okay, so right now there's an organization called Next Generation, or NGen, and what it is that, and here's the link. And they're looking at the new technology, the disruptive technologies that are going to come about, through better robotics and an evolution in artificial intelligence. And what that can do is it will actually, through training and through investment, will be able to allow Canada to get into the next generation of global supply in terms of exports. And that's what this is all about. So thank you for that question. That's a really good question. And here's some of the things that are going on. So I put the link there. I actually subscribe to their newsletter, and I know what's kind of happening. But what it is that you can take a look at which colleges are involved with them and find out what kind of training that's out there that to be able to pick up on the next generation of manufacturing. And then the other one, especially like optimize Canada's energy industry. Well, there's a move afoot not only to get Canada's energy across its own country, but also to provide high value products and sell high value products rather than just commodities. And that's happening as well. So again, this is all the crux of where are we going, in the next 5-10 years, which the challenges will be yours in terms of understanding what new capabilities will come out of Canada based on next generation manufacturing, new policies created to be able to make Canada a powerhouse in energy, and then up the number of consulting services that they do. This is all going to affect you. So yeah, this is going to open it all up. All right, totally. All right. So that's where that is. So thank you for that question. I hope that I think I've got something here from there that, yeah, interesting. Thanks for the insights. All right. You could tell you hit an actual excitement point here, because I really think Canada has a great future. And I really think that, that if we embrace, the new technologies, we're going to be in a great shape. And oh, by the way, here's just one other one. The big rage right now is to build information centers or data centers for AI, because AI is just, it's all about big data, and it's going to suck up a lot of energy. Well, guess what? Alberta has a lot of energy to provide power production to develop AI data centers. Not only that, it has cold weather in the winter, right? And so that there's a lot less cooling energy required to cool these data centers, because all these all the equipment needs cooling, right? And it looks like that there's a possibility of like a $70 billion opportunity to build AI data centers for the world, right? And given that we've got a pretty decent telecom system as well to be able to get to the world, so there's a lot of opportunity here, is what I'm saying. So just keep your ear to Next Gen. You can subscribe to that, but also Flipboard can tell you a lot about where AI is going in Canada, and you can take advantage of the opportunities there. And again, BDC, the Business Development Bank of Canada, will give you a whole pile of information based on opportunities. Okay, so I'll leave you with that. I'm wishing everyone well on the test. Please kind of go through the path that I've given you to study for the test. I know there's a lot of information. Keep abreast of what I've highlighted in the commentary presentations, what I've bolded, and then how I've given you some hints as I'm going through on these these presentations here. Okay, and best of luck. So we'll leave it at that, and we'll catch you next week.